questions, because that is actually that is the purpose of the webinar. So you want to have these webinars from time to time so that we can address your questions. If it was a face-to-face okay, at the same time, we will also need to monitor the background noises. So, okay, thank you. So I was saying, if it's a face-to-face learning, then you'll have plenty of opportunities to ask questions. But because of the learning, we understand that from time to time, instructors will have to meet with students so that we can address your concerns. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. Okay, so our focus for today is the Unit 1, IG1. But if you have questions related to IG2 or Unit 2, the risk assessment, that's also okay. We can also cover those questions maybe at the end when there are no more questions related to IG1. So what we did is just to, we asked you to send your questions in advance. Reason for that is so that I will know what to cover, what to talk about. Since Nebosh hasn't issued any new documents for us to review it, there is no learner feedback yet. So what we can do is, again, just take your question one by one and then try to address those. If you have additional questions, feel free to type in the chat box and we'll look at those at the end of the presentation. So the questions were focusing on the exam, access, submission. Some of you asked questions about how to answer questions. And there are also some questions related to the closing interview. Okay, okay, so let's get started. I just took all the questions and put those in a PowerPoint presentation, not in any order. And then at the end, if you have additional questions, we can also go through those. So Alan is asking if we can record this video. Yes, we are recording this now. And just like our previous webinars, this will be posted on Trainovate, Facebook, YouTube page, YouTube channel. You can access those videos once again. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first question was, in previous exams, what is the usual time of sending the questionnaire to the examinee? So first of all, questions are not sent to you. You will have access to the question through the Nebosh learning platform. So these questions will be only available on the day of the exam, which is April 7. If you are in the UK, exam will start on April 7 at 9 in the morning. So in the Philippines, that's 4 p.m., 4 in the afternoon. In other side of the world, I don't know, you'll have to check the time, but it's 9 in the UK, so 4 in the afternoon for the Philippines. So that's the only time exam will be available. So they will not send it to you. You'll have to log on to Nebosh learning platform, and then you can log on ahead, like 2-3 days ahead of the exam day. But the questions will only be available on April 7, 4 p.m. in the Philippines. Okay, this Nebosh learning platform, once you register for the exam, a couple of days before the exam day, they will send you the access, password, the link, how to access this, and so that you can get familiar with the platform first. And on the day of the exam, that's the only time you can have access to the question. Okay. Next, will Nebosh provide the answer sheet to fill up, or any Word document will do? Aside from the question paper, you will also have to download the answer sheet provided by Nebosh. So it's a simple Word document. You have all the questions already on that paper. What you need is just to fill up the sections for each question. So answer sheet is provided. You download this from the platform, just like you download the question paper. And then once you complete the exam, you submit it. It could be in a Word format or PDF. You submit or you upload it on the learning platform again. Okay, any requirement for the font size? None. There is no requirement. There's no specific requirement for the font and the size. Just make sure that you select the fonts that are easy to read. Okay, so no requirement, just because examiners, they want to see a paper that is easy to read. Sometimes it affects your mood when you look at the paper and it's very, very blurb, or the fonts are so small or difficult to read. It can affect the examiner in some way. So just make sure you select the ones that are easy to read. Okay, do we need to affix our signature in the answer sheet prior to send the PDF file to Trainovate? I'm not sure if this is for Unit 1 or Unit 2, the risk assessment. For Unit 1, for the open book exam, you do not send it to Trainovate. You will upload it on the Nebosh learning platform. So it's like you're sending it directly to Trainovate, not to Trainovate, sorry. You are sending your answer directly to Nebosh through the Nebosh learning platform. You do not need to sign anything for the OBE, just complete the answer sheet. You can submit it in Word format or PDF and then upload it to the platform. If you are talking about the risk assessment, that's Unit 2. Yes, you have to submit it to Trainovate. You don't need to sign any part. Submit it to Trainovate in PDF. Trainovate or your learning provider will communicate the deadline to you. Okay, so in both units, you do not need to sign like your real signature. Okay. Next, on the day, on the exam day, whom to call or contact in case of questions or clarification. So what if you cannot access the question? What if you need some clarification? Who do you talk to? So according to the Nebosh guide, they said you can contact a Nebosh directly. So through this email, so this email obe@nebosh.org.uk, or you can just go straight to their website. There is a live chat where you can raise your concern or question. So this is directly to Nebosh. You are not allowed to contact your instructor during the exam. If you think questions are not clear, you are not allowed to ask your instructor. Unfortunately, that would be a malpractice, but you can contact Nebosh directly. Next, so now someone asked this very, very interesting question. The question was, if you look at exam questions like the sample that you find on the mock exam or the learning feedback for August 2020 OBE, sometimes the question include this statement based on the scenario only, or sometimes it's something like, you should support your answer where applicable using relevant information from the scenario. So the question is, what do this mean? How do I answer the question whenever these statements are included? Does this mean that I am not allowed to use references anymore? So how do we answer this question? So let's take this one by one. So the first one, based on the scenario only. So an example of question, let's see this one. So I took this example from the OBE Open Book Exam of August 2020. This is task number 2. There is a learner feedback related to this OBE August 2020. If you're not yet familiar with it, you can download it through Nebosh website. We also had previous webinar where we covered this OBE August 2020. So check the previous webinar if you want to know more about this. So I just picked one question, and this question says, based on the scenario only, what unsafe behavior would be included in the report? So of course, first of all, this is a scenario-based exam. So you cannot actually answer this question without reading the scenario first. Why? How does it work? Because the tendency would be, you look at the question and it says, what unsafe behavior would be included in the report? So you are starting making your research. Maybe you will research what are examples of unsafe behavior. If you look in your manual, or maybe you do some Google research and you want to know what are some examples of unsafe behavior. So if you look at your course note, for those of you who have a manual, or maybe you are on the e-learning platform, if you look at the page or the section that deals with unsafe act, unsafe behavior, you will see this list. So through your research, this is the result of your research. So you see there's a list of unsafe act, unsafe behavior. Now the question is, can I just copy paste this and put it on my answer sheet? Is that correct? Will I get mark from this? The answer is, what do you think? Can I just copy paste this and put this as my answer? No, the answer is no. That is actually incorrect. Why? Because the question says based on the scenario only. There's a lot of unsafe behavior here, but not all of them are applicable to the scenario. So in order for you to answer that question, yes, you can look at some example of unsafe behavior, but not all of them will be applicable to the question. So where do I find the answer then? I need to go back to the scenario and then look from there what are example of unsafe behavior. Maybe through your research, it could help you to understand what are unsafe behavior, what does it mean? You can research on that, but at the end of the day, the answer must be taken from the scenario. So example of correct answer for this one, using a mobile phone while operating forklift, stacking goods in aisle, thereby blocking designated walkways, workers stepping into vehicles' routes. So where did I take this answer? I took this from the scenario. Because in the scenario, it was mentioned that the operator was using mobile phone while operating the forklift and so on. Okay? So based on the scenario only means you really need to get your answer from the scenario. Maybe you can do some research in order for you to understand some terms, but at the end of the day, the answer must be based on the scenario. You cannot just mention any unsafe behavior that comes into your mind. It must be the ones that are included in the scenario. So this is why it's very, very important to read the scenario. And I would say read it several times. I would say highlight keyword or anything, because most of the time answers are actually on the scenario. So read the scenario very carefully. Okay, one thing that also we need to observe through that question, let me go back to the question. So it says 6 marks. So you see there's a 6 between bracket. 6 marks means you need to provide at least 6 different answers to get the mark for this one. Okay. So that's when the question is based on the scenario only. So you need to get the answer from the scenario. Okay, another question, similar question would be, again, this was taken from the OBE August 2020, task number 7, question C. The question here is the investigation into the recent accident when a worker's leg was broken is now focusing on management failure. Based on the scenario only, what management failures could have contributed to the accident? Same thing again. You can do some research. You want to understand what is management failure? What do we mean by management failure? But at the end of the day, for the answer, you must base it on the scenario. So you must read the scenario and then identify from the scenario what are possible management failure that could have contributed to the accident. So are we clear on this? I did not include the answer to this question, but again, you can go back to the document available on Nebosh website. The title is Learner Feedback. And that document, in that document, you'll see Nebosh will look at the question and then put a comment for each question, what kind of answer will be applicable. So that's based on the answer, on the scenario only. So you can do some research, but the answer must be based on the scenario. Okay, so the other one, the other question was something similar. What if the question tells me to, here, another question, let's read the question. Because of the, again, all the example questions here are taken from the OBE from August 2020. This is task number 6. Because of the recent incidents, you have decided to review the first aid arrangements in the warehouse. What do you need to consider so that first aid needs are realistic and proportionate for the warehouse workers? Note, you should support your answer where applicable using relevant information from the scenario. You do not need to include specific first aid equipment. So there it is. We have this note again. It says you should support your answer where applicable using relevant information from the scenario. So how do I answer this question? Okay, so you look at the question and you see, the topic is about first aid. You check your manual on the first aid page, or you do some research. And if you look at the manual, there is a section there that says what are the things to consider when making arrangement for first aid. You can also do a quick research online. You might see an answer for that. So, for example, based on the course note, you'll see this. It's just a copy paste from the manual, by the way. So just did a copy paste here. So here we have the answer to what to consider in the first aid arrangement, which is actually the question. The question says, for the first aid to be realistic, what are the things that you need to consider? But once again, can I just do a copy paste here? Can I just copy this answer and put it as my answer? Well, some of this will be okay, but the question says you have to support your answer using information from the scenario where it's relevant. So instead of just doing a copy paste here, because if your answer is just like this, you will not get the mark. You need to tailor it to the question. So how it will look like? So for example, if you say hazardous substance, then you need to tailor it to the scenario. Were there any hazardous substance in the scenario? Did it mention anything about that? What about the risk task? What can I say about this? So the answer will look like something like this. So this is incorrect. If you're just going to do your research and then copy paste the answer from your research, that is not the right way to do, because the question says you must support your answer using information from the scenario. If this is the one I'm giving, there is no information from the scenario here. So this is incorrect. So instead, what you can do is, for example, high risk task. So you see, going back to the previous slide, we can see here, first bullet, hazardous substance, high risk task. So for high risk task, what can I say? So I go back to the scenario, and the scenario mentioned that it's about, it's a warehouse. It is assumed that some work at height, work with machinery and manual handling will be involved due to presence of shelving, racks, and forklift trucks, which tells me that it's a high risk job because there are some working at height, there are some working with machinery, manual handling, and so on. So you see, where did I get that information? I took it from the scenario. I'm not inventing. I'm not listing all the high risk, possible high risk tasks here. I cannot say confined space entry because there is no confined space entry in the scenario. So you must always go back to the scenario. Okay, what about hazardous substance? Once again, that was one of the answers. If you look at the factors to be considered, the previous slide. So instead of just saying hazardous substance, I need to tailor it to the question, support my answer using information from the scenario. In this case, I can mention that there are also hazardous substance or hazardous chemicals present, which increase the likelihood for first aid to be required. Where did I get this? Because again, in the scenario, it was mentioned that part of the materials that they store on the racks are hazardous chemicals. So I can mention that here. Okay, what else? Another example, working pattern, which was one of the bullet. If you look at the things to be considered in first aid, it says there working patterns, and I need to tailor it to the scenario. I need to get support this with information from the scenario. And then here I mentioned that consideration of the working patterns, 4 days on, 4 days off. Where did I get this 4 days on and 4 days off? From the scenario. I did not invent it. Then, and so on and so on. For these answers, I took this from that learner feedback. If you want to know more, you can go back to that document, the learner feedbacks issued by Nebosh related to the August 2020 open book exam. All right. So now, do we see do we understand the question whenever it says support your answer using information from the scenario? It doesn't mean that you should not do any research. You can do some research, but you cannot just copy paste your answer from the manual, answer from your research, because most of the time it's not really applicable to your scenario, or it's not tailored to the scenario. So you can use those information plus information that you have from your scenario. So it's very, very important. I'll repeat this again. Read the scenario carefully, because most of the time answers are already included there. Just need to analyze it properly and do some research and then complete it with information from the scenario. That's how we answer it whenever the question is saying use information from the scenario to support your answer. Okay, so two things that are very, very common. So we had two things based on the scenario only. In those cases, you must take your answer from the scenario. And then the other one is supporting your answer using information from the scenario. Okay, moving on. Wait. Okay, another question here. The same thing again. Let me read the question. To improve performance in the organization. Wait. Okay. Sorry for that. You know that you need to positively influence health and safety culture. You feel the culture at the warehouse is currently negative. Question, what are the negative indicators of safety culture at the warehouse? Again, you should support your answer where applicable using relevant information from the scenario. So same thing again, the tendency would be to do a quick research first. What do we mean by negative indicator of safety culture? So you can do your research, but at the end of the day, you must support your answer using information from the scenario. By the way, just between bracket, in previous webinars, we said that there are sometimes answers that are really not relevant to the question. It's like just filling up your answer sheet, but I mean, it's not helping in any way. It will just make you feel good. It looks like you have a very long answer, but most of them are not relevant. For example, here, you do not need to define what is safety culture. No, we don't need that. You do not need to provide a recommendation on how to improve the safety culture. That's not the question. The question is just focusing on negative indicators. So here, just put some correct answer. Again, same thing, research, what do we mean by negative indicators? Do some research, but then support your answer using information from the scenario. So negative indicators could be the accident rate, the near miss, the complaints, the management commitment, lack of management commitment because it's negative indicator, but you cannot just list it as it is, lack of management commitment. Support your answer. What makes you say that management are not committed in this organization? So you need to look for information that could support that. In this case, we are talking about management are rarely seen in the warehouse, which shows a lack of visible leadership. So that you will get the mark. If you just say lack of management commitment, the question is where? Why are you saying that? Where did you get this information? So you need to provide information from the scenario. Okay. And so on. So here we have near miss, management, complaint, frequency of complaint, and so on. It's like, for those of you who took the Nebosh exam before, this is like the outlining thing. So there's like a title and then you elaborate it. And the elaboration, you are using information from the scenario in order to support your answer. Okay. So I hope it's clear now, based on the scenario only and using information from the scenario to support your answer. It doesn't mean that you cannot do some research. You can always do some research, but when this says based on the scenario only, so you need to refer to the scenario only. And I think Nebosh will not give us questions if the answer can just be found online, I think. They're not that nice. So they want you to use the information that you found from your research and apply it to the given scenario. Okay, so other question, my access, this is access related or the reference, I think. My access to Trainovate e-learning platform has expired. How can I indicate it as a resource? Well, for the resource or the reference, on the answer sheet, there is a section provided at the end where you can just list all your resources. It doesn't mean you need to provide a specific link. Just saying course note will do, course notes, HSC websites, or things like that. So you don't actually need to provide the entire link. Nebosh says that if you just mention course note, that would be applicable, that would be acceptable. Okay, so some people would put course note, some people say elementary, Trainovate course note, both are accepted. There's no issue. So even if your access to the e-learning platform has expired, you do not actually need the link to that platform so that you can copy paste the link as a reference in your answer sheet. Just say course note or Trainovate course note, any of these would be okay. Okay, kindly give more elaboration about dealing with the reference and answering actual exam paper. This question, I really don't know how to answer this. Just give me more specific question, please. I think we had some samples already about answering actual exam paper. Well, we talk about the based on the scenario only and so on. You could also look at previous webinars because we were talking about how to answer questions that are saying comment on the organization safety. How do we answer when the question is comment and other types of questions? So please just go back to our previous webinars. There's a lot of questions. We also address how to answer actual exam papers. The previous webinars are available on Trainovate YouTube channel, so just have a look at that. Or you can also just give me more specific question for this one. For the reference, again, just don't worry too much about the reference. There is a section dedicated for that on the answer sheet, and just provide a list of all the reference that you use. Some people do not have a lot of reference. I've seen people just put in their course note and scenario. That's it. Okay, that's okay. That's accepted. I've seen some people put in a lot of reference, a lot of website. That's also okay. So do not worry too much about the reference. Okay, next for the closing interview, can we receive a text message in our contact number aside from the email? This actually we need an email. First of all, for the exam, you have no choice. It must be an email because Nebosh will contact you through the email when they send to you the access, the login information to the Nebosh learning platform. So it must be through email. For the closing interview, we will also send to you the Zoom link through email. So we really need an email. I don't know, aside from that, maybe Jovi, what do you think? Is Jovi here?
Yes, ma'am.
So what do you think about this question? Can we receive a text message in our contact number aside from the email?
I send them to chat and text sometimes, ma'am. They can know that I am sending emails.
So it's both email and text and chat. It's all of the above. Or what? Okay, for the one who asked for this question, the answer is we still need an email. We always need the email. You need it for Nebosh. We need it also when sending the Zoom link, but in addition, Trainovate coordinator could also follow up using text, chat, or your text message. Is that correct, Jovi? Can we put it this way?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What else? During the closing interview, can we ask the interviewer the status? Could either pass or fail? The answer is no, because interviewers are not allowed to comment on that. You can ask, but the answer would be no, because the one conducting the closing interview are not allowed to comment on your answer if it's a pass or a fail. That's the rule, so we cannot do anything about that. Okay, and that is not the purpose of the closing interview. It's not to check if your answers are correct or wrong. It's to check if the answers you provided are your own. You did not get help from anyone else while taking the exam. That's the purpose of the closing interview. Okay. Okay, so that's it for the questions that we had. Before we go through the chat box, there is one question related to risk assessment. So let's just go through this one quickly. In IG2 risk assessment part 2, is it accepted by Nebosh if? So quick reminder, part 2, that's the the table, risk assessment table, starting with the hazard, category and hazard, who might be harmed and how, existing controls, or what are you already doing, then what are the additional controls, the time scale, responsible person. Okay, so here the question is it accepted if in column 3, I will leave blank and I will just write no control measures in place. So this is referring to the section, what are you already doing? So can we just leave it blank and say no control measure in place? Yeah, you can do that. In fact, do not leave anything blank. If there is no existing control, just say no controls in place. This is okay. But careful, you cannot just do the same thing for all your 10 hazards. You cannot have 10 hazards and the entire column 3, what are you already doing, is blank. No, it's not realistic because a company should have at least few controls in place already. So it's like, that's a little bit lazy. So you can do this for some of the hazards, but not all, not the entire 10 different hazards. Okay, so in column 4, I will completely write the control measures according to the standard needed. Okay, yeah, that is what you're supposed to do. What else? In column 5, I will just write individual timescale in every control measures. Yeah, good. In column 6, individual responsible person in every timescale. Yeah, this is exactly what we are looking for. So once again, you can have some cases or some hazards where there are no existing control. It means that the additional controls will be a little bit longer. For each actions under additional controls, you must provide responsible person. For each action, you also must provide specific timescale. So yes, this is correct. You can do this for some of the hazards, but not all of them. Make sure for other hazards, you actually have some existing controls in place. Okay, now, okay, let me stop sharing and let's go through the chat box for the additional question. Okay, okay, John is asking how long the exam would be this coming April. The exam is 24 hours, which means you have 24 hours to complete the exam and submit your answer on the Nebosh learning platform. If you can finish it in 3 hours, 2 hours, 4 hours, that's okay, but you have a maximum of 24 hours to submit it. If you do not submit on time, that's a fail already. So make sure you submit within 24 hours.
Ma'am Alice, excuse me po.
Yes.
Do we need to start exactly at 4 p.m. or we can start later than 4 p.m.?
You can start later than 4 p.m. if you wish. You can.
Okay.
4 p.m. is just the earliest where you can have access to the question. That you can start later on, that's up to you. It's up to you to manage your time. You have 24 hours to submit it. It's up to you. When do you start? When do you submit, as long as you don't exceed that deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am Alice,
Yes, Alan.
what if there is a just in case the power interruption or any connections that we have, who will be the one to communicate or to contact you?
Okay, so again, you contact Nebosh directly. So there's an email. We've seen the email a while ago. So OBE at nebosh.org.uk. So you contact Nebosh directly for any issue related to access. There are cases where some people fail to submit on time because of internet connection problem. So in those cases, you can again inform Nebosh and they might consider, it depends. So sometimes they give consideration, they can extend the time a little bit if you have internet connection. The right thing to do if you have any problem will be to inform Nebosh, communicate with them through email, and then maybe they can give you some consideration. Okay?
Thank you for the answer.
So what's the time frame? So that's 24 hours. How about student number? Already taken before the old version. Yeah, student number remains the same. If you took the exam before, you will use the same student number. Okay, if you don't know your student number, you can coordinate with Jovi. because you need a student number, it must be indicated in the answer sheet. You must indicate that also on the risk assessment. So coordinate with Jovi if you don't know your student number. If you took the exam before, a long time ago, a few years ago, student number remained the same. Okay, next question. We can't access our learning emails and username is not being recognized. Are we referring to the Trainovate learning platform? Okay.
Yes po, ma'am.
Yes.
Jovi, I think we've addressed this ones already, not yet.
Then I communicated to Kevin.
Yeah, so we are working on it. If for any access problem, just please communicate with Jovi, and Jovi is actually working with our tech team trying to solve the issue. Okay. Is there any limitations for answers? What is the maximum word count? So the maximum word count is 3,000 words for the entire exam, 3,000 words. We can exceed a little bit, but not too much. The point of those word count is just a reference to you to tell you that you don't submit a book. Most of the time, if the answer is very long, most likely it's just a copy paste from somewhere else and there is no substance. So make sure you stay within the limit. And you can exceed a little bit, but not too much, like 3,200, 3,500. It's okay, but not too long. Okay. The same goes for the risk assessment. By the way, you have those word count. It's again to tell you that no need to write a very long paragraph. These are like your recommendation on how long the paragraph should be in those risk assessment. Okay, next. And by the way, for word counts, you are required to mention your word count. There is a section for that in the answer sheet. So you have to write how many words do we have based on the entire answer, the entire exam. There is a section that you need to fill up. If you look at a Word document, you can see that on the left lower part of the document, you will see your actual word count. So that number, you must indicate that in your answer paper. Okay, so mentioned earlier that the exam is 4 p.m. Philippine time. Is it 4 or 5, Jovi?
Ma'am, is it 5?
5?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because of the the time sometimes changes, the British summer time, because we are now in the British summer time. Is it correct? So it's 5 p.m. in the Philippines, not 9, not 5, not 4. Sorry. So 9 a.m. in the UK, that would be 5 p.m. in the Philippines. Okay, 5, correct, Jovi? Okay, it's 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. Okay, do we need to exactly begin at 5? No, we say that you can start anytime you want, but 5 p.m. that's the only time exam questions will be available for you to download. And time frame is 24 hours. No one is actually monitoring you. Did you access the question or did you start already? It's totally up to you. No one is monitoring that. We just need you to submit the answer before the deadline. That's it. For risk assessment, is it allowed to exceed the word limit? Yes, you can exceed. The word counts are just for recommendations. These are not requirements, so you can exceed, no problem. Where can I see the previous exams and the right answers? Previous exams, so far, Nebosh only provided on their website the August 2020. They provided some answers as well. So that's a document called Learner Feedback, and that's available for download on the Nebosh websites. In previous webinar, we also talked about this document, and we also mentioned where can you download this, where exactly from the website you can download that document. Other than that, we do not have any other exam paper. Maybe you can ask friends, those who took the exam before. You can ask for the questions. But for the answer, Nebosh has not yet provided any feedback regarding those previous exams aside from the August 2020. So we do not have actually the right answer. But you can always ask friends, and some of you did. Some of you actually took the initiative to answer those previous exam and then send it to me for feedback. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So feel free to send it to me. For those waiting for feedback, yes, I'm working on it. I will send it to you before the exam. Sure. Okay. Okay, next, in the risk assessment, there is a portion requires learner number as per Nebosh guide. We can able to get it 3 days prior the OBE exam. I want to send my risk assessment now. How can I get the learner number? Maybe Jovi can answer this one. Well, the question is, where can we get the student number? Can we get it now? Or do we need to wait 3 days before the exam?
I will send to their emails now.
Yeah, so the answer is you can get it, then Nebosh, Jovi will send it to you through your email. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes,
You do
ma'am.
not actually need to wait 3 days prior the OBE exam to get your student number. Jovi will send the student number to you. Is it, Jovi, once you are registered to the exam, you have a student number already? Is that correct?
Ma'am, Monday is the Monday, ma'am. They will get the email from Nebosh.
Once they register?
Yes, ma'am. Once they are registered, ma'am, they will receive an email from Nebosh that registration confirmation, and it has a learner number and then learner name.
Okay, okay. So once you register for the exam, once you are confirmed with Nebosh to attend the exam, they will send you an email and you will have your student or learner number. That's how we call it now, learner number. You do not have to wait 3 days prior the exam. 3 days prior the exam, they will send you an email regarding the login details to the Nebosh learning platform. Okay, what else? Yeah, the latest learner feedback available is the August 2020. We do not have any new document. We don't know if Nebosh will issue new ones, but that's the one we have so far. But again, for the previous exam, just ask previous friends who took the exam. I'm sure they have a copy, so you can get those from them. Okay, next, June. Next exam is June, Jovi, right? Is that correct? Do you have the date?
June 9, ma'am. June 9.
Yeah, can we register? Yes, Mr. Seo, you can register to the June exam. Kindly coordinate with Jovi. When will be the schedule for risk assessment submission for this April? Jovi, do you have a deadline for risk assessment? April 12th.
Yes, ma'am.
April 12th. And I believe we will have another webinar for risk assessment. When was that? Somewhere next week. I can't remember the date, but we will have another webinar where we can talk about your questions related to the risk assessment. Yes, learner number is the same for both Unit 1 and Unit 2 for the OBE and the risk assessment. Yeah, sure. You can, I will be taking the IGC2 exam for June. Is it all right? Yes, yes, you can take the exam per unit. Let's say for April, you will focus on Unit 1. And for the Unit 2, you'll do that next month, June, for example. That's okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
The result for April 7. When will be the result for the April 7 exam? Do we have that information, Jovi? You should count 50 working days. 50 working days. Do we have the date for the result, Jovi?
50 working days for the result, ma'am. For April 7.
Yeah, we do not have the exam, the exact date, but count 50 working days. So weekends not included. When you submit the IG2 risk assessment early after the OBE exam, can you have your test result early? Unfortunately not. Test results come as a batch. So you will receive the result all together at the same time. It's not because you submitted early, you'll get an early result. No, it's the same for the batch. Okay, any other questions?
Nothing.
Okay, please ask questions so that we can help you. I really don't know what to discuss if there are no questions. So any other questions?
Ma'am Alice, how many items will be given for the IGC1?
How many items? Number of questions, it varies.
Yes, number of questions. Okay, so it depends.
Sometimes it's 8 questions, sometimes it's 7. It varies actually. So it's not really good. What is the passing for the unit 1 and also unit 2? For unit 1, passing is 45, still the same. For unit 2, there is no score for this one. It's either a pass or refer. So you will pass if you meet all the criteria, and you will fail if there are important criteria that you missed. So it's either a pass or a refer. How do I know that I will pass? Make sure you complete all the sections. Make sure you provide all the informations that are required. You have a sample provided by Nebosh. Use that as your reference. Check it. Make sure you provide everything that is needed so that you will meet all the criteria. Most of the time, those who fail the risk assessment are those who do not follow the instruction. So just follow the instruction, even if you don't like it. Okay, what else? If I submit IG2 early from the deadline, can I still submit again if I made a mistake with what I sent earlier? Yeah, maybe Jovi can answer this one because she's the one receiving your risk assessment when you submit it. So the question, Jovi, is if they submitted again before the deadline and they want to resubmit again because they think they made a mistake. Is it possible?
Once they submit it, ma'am, it's final because I'm confirming it that no revision once and I upload it, ma'am.
So once you receive that email from Jovi that this is your final submission, so it's really final. Okay. Normally she will send you an email to acknowledge receipt of your risk assessment. So she said once it's final, it's final. But I think we can communicate to Jovi, coordinate with Jovi, please, in that case. What else? Choosing priority list in IG2, it should be on different hazard or can it be on one hazard? Nebosh says it can be from the same hazard. We are talking about the part 3 here, where you have to select 3 actions, the ones that you think are the most important one. And Nebosh says it could be from different hazard or from the same.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, is it okay to copy the hazards and precaution in e-learning syllabus for the risk assessment? Yeah, it's okay. For the controls, like say you have noise as a hazard, then you want to copy from the e-learning syllabus when it comes to the controls. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, but again, make it specific. This is why we have hazard and hazard category. So hazard category is noise. Now the hazard would be something more specific. Noise from where? Where is it coming from? That would be the hazard. So you can copy, but make sure the hazard are something more specific, not just general. Hazard category is noise. Hazard would be noise from something, state to source. Okay. You know anyone who took the previous OBE exam, we can get in touch with. How can we do this? Anyone? Maybe we can coordinate with Jovi with that. Jovi, can we do that? They are asking if you know anyone who took the previous exam they can get in touch with. Jovi,
Yes, ma'am.
how do we do this?
I will commit, ma'am, chat na lang po nila ako, ma'am, through
Yes.
my Facebook.
Okay. Kindly communicate directly with Jovi. Okay, what else? Do we need to specify the name
Hello.
of the responsible person for IG2 or just the designation? No need to put the name. You can just put the title, supervisor and manager, safety officer. We do not need the name. Okay. Okay, Sir Carlos Jr., I think you have a lot of questions to Ma'am Alice. Where is Carlos? You have a lot of questions. Jory is saying you have a lot of questions. Okay, IG2 part 2, we need to provide minimum of 10 hazards. Yes, that is correct. 10 hazards covering at least 5 different hazards category. Okay, COVID-19, in which hazard category belongs to? I would put that under, because COVID-19 is a virus, right? Not COVID-19 is a virus. COVID-19 is the disease, but it is caused by a virus. So I would put that under biological hazard. Okay. Okay, next. If you have other question, feel free to email. For those of you on the e-learning platform, send me a message. Not all of you are contacting me. It's always the same people over and over again. So thank you to the guys who are really active in sending me message. I remember it's Jory and Anthony and the others. So just feel free to contact me. If you have any question, please just send me a message through the e-learning platform or email. That's also okay. Okay, just to be clear, IG1 and IG2 to be submitted here, e-learning@trainovate.com.ph. No, that's for the risk assessment. For risk assessment, yes, you have to submit it to Trainovate using the e-learning@trainovate.com.ph. But for the Unit 1, the open book exam, you will submit it directly to Nebosh. How? You will have to upload or submit it through the Nebosh e-learning platform. What is that? How do we use that? You will receive an email from Nebosh for the links and for the access details so that you can get familiar with this platform used by Nebosh. So the OBE exam is directly submitted to Nebosh. Risk assessment is submitted to the training provider, and training provider will be the one to upload it on Nebosh system. Next, did you review the risk assessment that submit to you? Florito, when did you submit it to me? Is it the final submission or not? Is it for retake? When was this submitted? I'm really sorry. I've been reviewing a lot of things lately, but I will double check again. If you submitted to me because you are retaking and you would like to have some feedbacks before you submit again, yes, we could do that. But if you submitted to me in order for me to check first before your final submission, that is not allowed. That's a malpractice. So we cannot do that. Okay, so Florito, kindly send it to me again if it's a retake, but if it's your final submission, I cannot check it before submission. Okay, when should we expect the email from Nebosh for the access? 1 week, 2 days, 3 days before. Jovi, normally how early do they get the email from Nebosh? Sorry.
1 week, ma'am, before the exam.
Okay, 1 week before the exam. So check your emails. You'll get an email from Jovi.
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes they put in the spam or notification of their email.
Yeah, that's important. So also check the spam notification. for the Nebosh email from Nebosh so that you can have access to the their learning platform. Can I use CDC as reference for COVID-19 virus as hazard? Yes, you may use that. Do not forget to put CDC in that case in the sources of information. That is part 1 of your risk assessment under methodology. So under methodology, you need to cite or you need to list down the sources of information that you use for your risk assessment. And in that case, you can put CDC there. Okay. Is there someone watching you during the exam? No, no one is watching. You're totally on your own. So no, it's not invigilated. Just like the written exam we had before, there is no invigilators. No one is watching you. You are totally on your own. You download the question, you answer it, and then you submit it. Why are we asking that question, Euler? The answer is no, no one is watching you. But be aware of malpractices. Nebosh has ways to find that you are the one who took the exam, not someone else. Yes, and Euphemio saying yes, someone else. Yeah, God sees. That's correct. So, okay. So yeah, it's an online exam, but online in a way that you will upload your answer online. You do not need to go to a test center. You download the question paper and then you answer it on your site and then you go online again and submit. Okay, so that's what we mean. You do not need to stay online for the 24 hours. You do not need to stay on the platform during that period. You need to access the learning platform for you first to download the question. So download that. And then you can just leave the platform there, you can close it, and then later when it's time to submit, you open the platform again, go on the platform, and then you submit your answer. Okay, so, okay. Just want to say you need to be careful with malpractice because no one is watching in case some of you think about, getting someone else to answer the questions for you. It happened and it was discovered during the closing interview, so careful, watch out for that. Best thing is just to answer it on your own because how can we evaluate it? Later on, it will reflect on the work, how you're going to work. If you are not the one who took the effort, took the time to take the exam, how can we make sure that you can really be certified? It will be reflected on the way you work later on, and we do not want that. Especially in Trainovate, we want to make sure that you get your certificate because of your own effort. That has been always our policy, and we are still keeping that up to now. We want to keep the quality of the training, and so again, be aware of malpractices. It happened before, and last batch we had cases, and there are cases under investigation now. Okay. Okay. Someone is asking about the closing interview. What is it about? So closing interview is one of Nebosh step or process in order to check that there is no malpractice. So what is a closing interview? During a closing interview, someone will conduct an interview and the interviewer will first read your answer. So the interviewer will have access to your answer. And then interviewer will ask you some questions regarding your answer. The point of that is to really check that you understand what you wrote. You were the one who took the exam, not someone else. So we can see that through the way you answered the question during the interview. There will be some questions, some specific questions, and then interviewer can assess from that if there was malpractice or not. So the closing interview is usually done through Zoom or any other platform. So it's online. And training provider will be the one to assign an interviewer. So it's not done by Nebosh, it's done by training provider. After the closing interview, training provider or the interviewer will have to send a report to Nebosh saying it's okay or if there was any malpractice or not. So that's the closing interview. It takes around 10 minutes. It's very short, 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. Okay. To close, is there particular time for closing interview? Okay, after the exam, we have a specific time frame or specific time for us to conduct all the closing interview. Maybe 2 weeks after the exam, we should complete all the closing interview. So what we do is we will send you a schedule and then we will schedule when are you going to do the closing interview. So it's mandatory for all of you who will take the exam. You must go through the closing interview. So we will coordinate that with Jovi. When is your availability? When's the time and date? We will send you the available schedule. What we usually do is in one day, maybe we can complete 8 or 9 students per day. It's about 15 minutes maximum per student. So don't worry, it doesn't take too much time. But for the schedule, that will be coordinated with Jovi. Okay, want to clarify, is it limited only 100 megabytes capacity for the answer sheet? Does it say? Yeah, I think it mentioned something like that. But anyway, if it's just text, you will not exceed that. You won't even reach that. You're not allowed to put pictures, by the way. So don't put pictures or chart or any graph. It's not required. It's mostly text. So yeah, you will not exceed that. You won't even reach that. Okay, is the closing interview done right after our submission or we will wait for the email? After you submit, we will, usually it takes 2 to 3 days after, we will communicate to you. The 2 to 3 days after, because interviewer will have to prepare, of course, we need for Nebosh to give us the access so that you can look at your papers. Interviewer will have to read your papers so that he can ask the specific questions. So maybe 2 to 3 days after the exam. Or even more than that, but not more than that. I mean, I'm sorry, I mean, if the exam is Saturday, is the exam Saturday, Joey? Saturday, right? Like last batch. Is it Saturday?
Wednesday, April
So if
7th.
the exam is Wednesday, then the closing interview will start then like Monday or something like that. Okay, next. Can I use ISO 45001, which is management system, as reference during OBE exam? Yes, you may use ISO 45 as a reference. Can I use Aramco general instruction as a reference in IGC2? Yes, you can do that. But then again, don't forget to mention it under sources of information. That's part 1, risk assessment methodology. So it depends on our availability because we have work in daytime. Yes, what we did for the closing interview, what we did is we give you time from like 10 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. So you need to select what is your availability between that time frame. It's only 15 minutes. So even if you are working, it can be during lunch break, can be during your break time. So yeah. Aside from ILO, can I use Saudi Aramco general instruction as one of the reference in IGC2? Yes, you can use that. However, when it comes to risk assessment part 3, where we are talking about the legal arguments, specific legal arguments, it has to be ILO. So it could be an ILO convention, recommendation, or codes of practice. So that's part 3 under legal argument. Okay, we will get a notification from Nebosh confirming that our answers to the exam were uploaded in the platform. How can we check to confirm that we've completed the exam? Yeah, there is a notification on the platform once you successfully submitted. So you will know. So it's not an email, it's on the platform itself. There is like a small window that will appear saying that submission is successfully done. Closing interview is for IG1 and risk assessment. No closing interview is only for the open book exam, so that's only for IG1. There is no closing interview for Unit 2. Will there be an OB scheduled on weekends? I'm not sure. Based on, yeah, I think that was my mistake. We never had exams on Saturday. Did we ever had exams on Saturday, Jovi? No, I think it was during weekdays, or not Saturday. Previous batch, yeah, it's always weekday. So sorry, there's no exam on Saturday. That was my bad. Last question, answers to be in MS Word converted to PDF. For Unit 1, for the open book exam, you can submit it in Word format or PDF. Both are okay, accepted. For the risk assessment, it must be submitted in PDF. If you have problem converting the document into PDF, you can always coordinate with Jovi. Maybe she can help. Right,
Yeah.
Jovi?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Jovi. Anything else? Anyone? Yes?
Okay na po.
Is there any question? Any questions?
Wala po.
Nothing from my side, ma'am. Thank you.
What about the others?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Clear.
All
No
clear?
one.
None for
All clear, ma'am. All clear.
Are you ready for the
Thank you so
exam?
much.
Are you
Ma'am,
ready?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We need more. We need more.
We need more time.
information.
Need
Yeah.
more
We need more, we need more information, and also it's a big help for you.
Okay,
To give some tips, ma'am.
yeah, but I cannot give the tips if there are no questions. Give me some questions to ask. I need questions. I hope there will be schedules on weekend as I am busy in weekdays with work. I don't know. Nebosh is the one deciding for the schedule of the exam, so I don't know. Okay, I'm not tired of answering questions, Anthony. I need questions, so no one is asking questions. Especially for those of you on the e-learning platform, I do not receive much questions, so it's always the same people sending me questions every day. So okay.
Hirap ang may trabaho, ma'am. Papasok yung tanong.
Okay, and for those of you who submitted your mock exam, don't worry, I will be reviewing those and feedbacks. Totally, I'll try to do that this week. Not later than Monday for those who submitted already. Anything else? Should we end? When is the next one, Jovi?
Ma'am, for the IG2 webinar, ma'am, it's on next week, next Saturday.
Okay. So see you again next Saturday, and we will try to do the same thing. We will ask you to send your questions in advance. So that way that will help me more in preparing on what to discuss. So please send your questions. Okay, so that's it on my side. Jovi, do you have any announcement, anything?
I will send them email for the student number and chat also on the FB.
Okay, so just communicate with us, with Jovi, for anything, the submission, the student number on my side. Contact me for anything related to the content, if you have questions related to the training or the exam or so on. let me know. Do not hesitate to send me a message through the e-learning platform for those of you who are on e-learning, or you can use emails or messenger anyway. Okay, except during the exam. You cannot contact me during the exam. That is clear. You cannot. So this is your chance.
Maybe after the exam.
So,
After the
ma'am,
exam,
maybe before the exam, we will contact you.
like 5 minutes before, yes, but the moment the exam starts, I will switch off my phone. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for attending our webinar. We'll see you next week for risk assessment webinar. Wish you the best in your exam. Final advice, read the question carefully and read the scenario. Misunderstanding is always one of the main problems. So read the question, read the answer. Relax, it's open book. There's less stress compared to closed book. But you still have to prepare. And you can do this. You can do this. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless everyone.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Keep safe,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
God
Thank you, ma'am.
bless.
Good luck.
Thank you, Alice.
God
Bye.
bless.
Thank you, Alice. Bye.
Thank you, Ma'am Alice and Ma'am Joby.